So let's say you've got two objects here and you constrain one to the other. So we'll constrain the small sphere to the large sphere. Sphere, so the lead object to the following object. So select the lead object, then the following. Constrain, and I'm going to do a parent constraint. Make sure maintain offset is on. That way they stay separate. Haha, they follow together. So there's two ways I can turn off constraints. The first is to select the object, and right in here, we have the weight of the constraint. So you see here, P sphere, that's this one here, P sphere 1, P sphere 1, weight. The W stands for weight. It's the percentage or strength of the constraint. 1 is 100%, 0 is 0%. If I turn this off, 0, doesn't follow anymore. I turn this on, boop, it follows. Yay. So that's the first way to do it. Second way, take your constrained object, set a key on it. When you do that, you'll see the attributes turn green instead of blue. This means that they are controlled by keys or constraints, one or the other. And we can switch which one is leading with the blend parent attribute right here. Once again, 0 is off. Whee! Doesn't follow. 1 is on. Whee! It follows. There we go. Which one do we choose? In most animation cases, if you are just turning a constraint on and off, that's the whole goal. You're not switching between constraints. You're not doing anything more complex. You're just literally turning it on or off. I almost always recommend to animate the blend attribute for one specific reason. If I set a key here, you can see in the timeline, it shows our key right there on frame 1. Let's go to frame 35. I'm going to set a key on this attribute right here, the weight attribute. So I'm going to right click, key selected. Ah, there's a key. Look at my timeline. Do you see a key? Nope. I set a key on frame 40. Right click, key selected. I can see that it's bright red there, so there should be a key there. And there's a key on frame 35. Do we see it on the timeline? No. This means that if ever I had a whole bunch of animation here on my timeline, boop, 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 and I needed to retime it and I start moving keys around, the keys for that constraint don't get moved with it because they're not there. They're not selected. Now, the big thing is why? Why aren't they showing? The big thing is when you select an object, the keys that show up in the timeline are the keys on that specific object that you have selected. These attributes down here are not part of the object. They are part of the constraint. This is just a shortcut to that constraint. So for example, if I open up the outliner, Windows Outliner, let's dock this here. Boop. There's our P sphere. And there's the constraint underneath it. It's a separate object. It's a separate node in Maya. If I select that, hey, look, there's our keys. That's our keys right there. 35 and 40 and all the other keys we put on there. So if you're going to be just animating the constraint on and off, and you're constraining or you're keying this attribute, be very aware that you are not going to see those keys in the timeline. You have to be very careful of that. The reason I know this is because when I was a student, I didn't realize this, and I retimed a whole shot after doing, I think it was like 6 constraints, and it broke every single constraint, and I had to redo them all. It took me a whole day to do that. It sucked. It was terrible. Now, does that mean I should never animate the weight attribute? No. There will be moments when you have to animate the weight attribute versus the blend. And this is usually when you want to switch constraints. So when you're animating, let's say I want this, let's say this is the hand and it's just picking something up. It's going to pick it up. Okay, whoop, I turn that on, great. But what happens now if this cube is going to take that sphere and pick it up as well? So I need the cube to take the ball from the other sphere and move it along. Well, let's do a constraint. So I'm going to take the cube, constrain the sphere, constrain parent, and look at that. On the sphere now we have a weight attribute for the P sphere, this one here, and for the P cube, that one there. This is the weight of both constraints. So it's constrained to two objects at the same time, which means that if I do this, you can see it's following both objects. If I need to switch, I just key these attributes. So I turn the weight of the cube off. That means the cube has no effect. The sphere will have 100%. And then when I switch it, I would just do this. And now the cube leads the object. The sphere does nothing. I can have a character pass another object to someone else or switch hands. So I can take the pen here and do this very easily just by animating those attributes, that weight between all the constraints. I could even pass it, like have my hand doing this, put it in my mouth, grab it with the other hand, all with 3 constraints. So hand to pen, mouth to pen, then other hand to pen. And I just animate those weight attributes, and I can have a character like grab a sword, put it in his teeth, or a dagger, let's say, put in his teeth, start climbing a rope, take it out with his other hand, do a cool action scene like that. Very simply. But I have to be very careful. None of these will show up in my timeline if I'm not paying attention. I have to make sure to select my constraint here. The weight will turn all the constraints off globally. Or sorry, not the weight, the parent blend. That's what I'm saying. The blend will turn off the constraints globally. So regardless of which constraints are on, this will just turn it off completely. Which means that it's perfect for, even if you have multiple objects that are gonna, like maybe the dagger is on the table, I grab it with my right hand, put it in my mouth, climb a rope, grab it with my left hand, like so. I would have the blend parent be the main like on-off switch, where the dagger's on the table, nothing's affecting it. And then I'd animate that as the hand picks up the dagger, and then I would switch to animating the weights when I do the transitions. And then, okay, maybe the dagger gets thrown at someone else. That's when I would animate the blend turning off again. Let's see, when we turn off the weight, it jumps to the original, I think. If you're turning off the weights, it's going to jump to the last position that it was keyed in or positioned in. So for example, if I move this, let's do this here. It's keyed right there. If I move this, let's actually make sure I move the right thing. Oh yeah, blend. That'll do it. So let's set a key right here. It's in this position. If I move this, whether I turn off the blend or the weight, it'll snap back to its position that it was in before. So there's something to be aware of.